What is up, folks? Welcome to the High Tech Podcast. We're here for another week of technology, craziness, nerdiness, and whatever else Will and I talk about in the moment. I don't really know. Sometimes it's a little bit of a grab bag in the beginning, folks. That's why you love us. So welcome to the High Tech Podcast. I am Josh, one of the hosts of the High Tech Podcast, joined by the one and only Ill Will, the other host of the podcast. What's up, buddy? How you doing?
Whoa, yo, I'm here, folks. I'm Ill Will. What's up?
I immediately regret
Please,
trying that nickname. I gotta be
never,
honest. Nope.
Never let me do that again.
Yep, you didn't. You didn't. This is why Will's not a DJ. In case you're curious.
Just gonna go to sleep. Just go to sleep.
Shh. The sun's getting kind of low. Buddy.
Sun's getting real low, but
yeah, time to go down. I regret that immediately. Anyway, welcome to the High Tech Podcast. We are excited to be here for another week. Before we get into our fun and craziness, just a reminder, we are on the interwebs. You can find us at all socials at either at High Tech Podcast or at High Tech Pod. Will, I was just listening to a podcast this week where they specifically tell people which handle goes to which social media, and I just laughed. I was like, so you guys can figure it out. We're rude. Email. You can also hit us up at inbox@hightechpod.us if you would like to be on the podcast. You'd like to let us know your thoughts about something we said. Positive or negative. We receive all feedback, receive. I didn't say what we'll do with it, but we will take it. And so you can hit us up at inbox@hightechpod.us if you'd like to get a hold of us for any of those reasons or other reasons I didn't mention, because I am not all knowing. Okay. And then also website, you can find us at hightechpod.us. Make sure to go check out that website. All of our episodes are on there with an episode page and fun links to things as we talk about articles or tools that we reference or things that we can make available to you. You can check that out as well as all of our affiliate links are there if you'd like to get a hold of any of the software that Will and I use regularly enough to actually have a relationship with.
Like our friends Notion and Reflection,
yep.
Two of our affiliates.
So you can go
enjoy them.
Check that out.
I would like to posit for the court if I could provide evidence.
Oh, we're doing
the
court cases?
If
That's
I may.
a different episode. I don't know what you're positing right now, but okay.
I know, right? Folks, in the coming weeks, we're going to be discussing courts. No, so I'm not committed to specifying whether it's High Tech Podcast or High Tech Pod, right?
Okay. Yep.
Go find them, because if I Google High Tech Podcast social media, just that, every hit here, everything on this entire page is us.
Now,
I'm actually really proud of that.
Yes, one small problem with that, Will. Are you doing that in like an incognito window or anything, or is that in your normal Google?
It's just Google.
Okay, Google's probably also pulling all of that up because we have our podcast in our data and algorithm.
All right, well, I'll go to incognito then.
I'm just saying. I'm not even sure if incognito would fix that. I mean, listen, I think we've gotten to enough of a level of a podcast that our name does pop up in one of at least the top search hits on High Tech Podcast, but I'm not doubting you, but
Incognito.
Okay.
Incognito. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, 5 is not us.
See?
So we're 4 for 5.
So incognito did change it a little bit.
6 is not us. 4 for 6. So 5 for 7. We ticked up one.
Okay.
That just says open.spotify.com. It doesn't have any information. Like our LinkedIn, in the top 10 to 15, we are a majority.
Okay.
So there is a high tech ! Podcast. Don't go listen to them, or do. It's fine.
Yeah, we don't know them. They could be totally fine.
They could be totally fine. There's a High Techies podcast. That's not us, but I'm getting things from our Apple Podcast episodes to Player FM.
I mean, we do have now over 200 episodes, so there's enough data from our podcast that would warrant us coming up as a podcast.
My point, I believe, stands that if you search High Tech Pod or High Tech Podcast, you will find us.
Yeah, it's fine. I think your case is warranted, though. This is the exact reason why we joke that I should probably have become a lawyer at some point. Because I immediately jumped into why your case was not totally valid. I don't know why I chose that side. I think I just like arguing. Sometimes, you know?
We should, episode idea. We should go to court and you're the judge. We should do that.
We do have time to change our one episode about AI use cases to a court case vibe if we wanted to do that. Anyway, sorry folks. Okay, we're diverging as we do in the intro. Like I told you, it's a crazy, interesting grab bag of things in the intro of the High Tech Podcast because we've been doing this for years and we still don't have a set intro. The intro is just us talking.
This is the intro.
Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off there for a second. What were you going to say?
No. My father used to say a little phrase, and I don't even know if it's from something, but it's something to the effect of, here we are for where we're going, all for here, in there, get out. It was the thing we'd get to a car, so we'd be in the car, here we are for where we're going, all for here and there, get out. He would, I don't know, but it's one of those moments, like, we are where we are because we're going there. We got to the place, so you're in, go, get out.
Get out, okay. Now that you've explained it makes more sense. I was trying to follow the words, and I don't know if I just haven't had enough coffee yet this morning, or I got...
Definitely the coffee.
I got lost.
It was also my dad. It's very Hobbiton. It's very like a
that's
little
true.
word
Yes,
puzzle
that's very true. I was trying to think what the vibe was, and it
like the phrase when Bilbo says,
"Yes,
I like half of you as much as I should," and the whole other bit. I can never remember.
Yeah, I can't. I have to remember the. I can't remember the whole quote right now. But
are we here for an episode, Josh? I don't even know what we're doing.
I do think we're here for an episode. That is what we're trying to do here at the High Tech Podcast. So this week. We wanted to talk a little bit. So we've been trying to diversify episodes here a little bit because we've basically done nothing for the first half of 2025. We basically did nothing but talk about AI. And that was mostly because Will and I are both on like larger AI initiatives in our work vibe, and so it's just kind of like the thing that we're talking about, and also because that's basically what everybody talks about in technology, unless you're like Linus Tech and you talk about building computers or phones, and we are not that type of podcast. It's not our vibe. Though,
no.
Side note, Samsung Fold 7 will. Have you seen? Well, you did see it because it showed up as an advertisement in our movie theater. Yeah.
The movie theater.
We went to see.
It's super small.
We went to see Superman, folks. And that's a different story. Anyway, this week on the podcast, though, we're continuing the non-AI focus, and we want to talk a little bit about learning management systems, kind of how to design them, how to make them useful. It's kind of like a user experience meets learning experience conversation a little bit.
Yeah.
So story setup time, Will. Set us up. Why are we talking about this on the High Tech Podcast? Other than the fact that this generally is the type of content we talk about on the podcast.
Right. Well, I'm about to be doing this, or I am doing this for the day job. So we are in year 4 of implementation, year 5 of having our current LMS. So we've had, I mean, that's actually a career high for me, being at a place who's had an LMS for 5 years.
Yeah.
That's we're 5 years
that's
in,
like
and
ages in will time. That's like
would have changed it, 3 years ago at this point, twice. But so I didn't have to say that entire time. But nonetheless, I'm actually on team keep this LMS. Like for our use cases, my day job's use cases, like I don't think it's actually valuable or worth our time to change the LMS, but we do need improvements. And one of the things that's true in my current case, but has also been true of my previous cases, is of LMS use, is that they're not usually set up right the first time by someone with expertise in learning management systems. And I do want to say before we go too deep on this, I think the principles we're going to discuss here are true of my experiences building a website, building a learning management system, even just building like a process, like a workflow or something. Like we're going to go into user journeys, we're going to go into wireframing, we're going to get into some technical things about what would really help you set up an LMS right the first time. Because even though we have an LMS in place in my day job, my current context, we're not going to switch. We do pretty much want to overhaul the entire. That's the project title, overhaul the LMS.
Yeah.
It's not like fix one or two things. It's not like let's improve the user experience. The title of the project is overhaul. So we're going to do rip and tear. We're going to like throw everything out. We're going to say everything's on the table. And when you do a fresh start, there's so many techniques or tools that can go into doing it well, like user journeys, wireframing, surveying, research groups, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to dig into some of those. But one of those premises, and we've experienced it, Josh and I, with our different learning management systems. I personally am not kicking Schoology or claiming Schoology as a bad LMS. I am going to point, though, or observe. Nice of you. I'm not personally doing it. I liked it. It had its flaws. Every LMS has its flaws, folks.
Some have more
never
going
to find the perfect LMS. But Schoology, a pro and a con for this platform was it was very rigid, right? And so they had come to the learning management system market and said, Blackboard, Moodle, some of these were so configurable that they were unusable. People would set up Moodle instances and they'd go so wily with all the applications, plugins. They'd make 3 or 4 different skins and sets, and this link. It could get hairy. Schoology kind of responded to that and said, "Well, Facebook's got it figured out. You got your members, your groups, your this. Very simple, and your banner structure. Like, let's just do Facebook, and it will work and look like this." The same, and whether you're in a group, it'll look like a course. If you're in a course, it'll look like a this. So everything will have a very structured, uniform platform. What that means, though, is the end user, and in a good way, doesn't have to make decisions. Like the LMS, the administrator, the designers. You can't change the icons. You can't change the order of things. You can't change what a course looks like. Like, it is what it is. That out-of-the-box offering works day one, but you can't customize it, right? Josh and I have talked about stories time and time again.
Sorry, I put quotes around your works. Sorry.
Josh the judge. Judge Josh. Ooh, that's going to stick. Yeah. So we had a faculty member, when I had the job before Josh, we had a faculty member come to us and say, hey, can we change the font? And he had these. We've talked about this story a few times on the podcast, but the font. He had proofs. He had evidence. Like, this font is less legible and not as good for memory and retention. We need to change the font. I'm like, sorry, can't. That was the answer. And I think there's goods and bads to that, right? When you've got an out of the box structure that you cannot customize, it does hopefully, air quotes, push you to focus on the content in the platform, not the platform itself.
Yeah.
What that means, though, is if the platform's not good or the user experience is not optimal, you can't fix it.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, some of Josh's qualms with Schoology specifically. But
yeah, I think, listen, this is not a Schoology bash example, but I want to lean on something here for a hot second that I think is important that we'll get into in different things, is the flaw in what Will described of that unnamed company that we've already named. Is
starts with school, rhymes with OG. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually am a fan of out of the box solutions, right? When they're done well. The issue with that example was some of what Will and I are going to talk about is how to set up an LMS well. You actually have to understand who the end user and the purpose is going to be for it, whether it's a website, learning management system, any kind of digital experience. You have to kind of figure out, okay, who is going to be your main user and why are they going to use it? The flaw in that Schoology example was Facebook has it figured out. Let's be Facebook. Facebook has it figured out for a social media platform. They did not have it figured out for a learning management platform. And so one of the biggest criticisms of like a Schoology example was that it literally looked like Facebook. And Facebook isn't an LMS. And so I think some of where they fell short in some dynamics of more complicated learning needs across different types of learning was that it really was just Facebook with folders. Like that, at the end of the day, that was basically what it was. And that was where it kind of fell short in some areas. So I'm not, there's a lot of things about Schoology that did work. There's a reason they took off in K-12. It's a different thing. But like from my experience, I came in after Will, and it was no longer meeting the needs we had, right? And so we ended up adopting Canvas as an LMS, and Canvas was one of those that they have some predefined stuff, but they enabled some ways for you to either customize the look of the LMS, but even down to the course level to kind of customize how what's in the navigation, what isn't, how people access things, how they get there. And so what Will is doing right now is Overhaul the LMS. We did a smaller version of that in my situation, where we overhauled the entire layout of our courses before we were about to release them. And we started with the premise of like, okay, what is the experience we want people to go through? And then we kind of went from there, but we took some different steps on how to get there. Some of the stuff Will and I are going to be talking about is like wireframing stuff out. We did some testing. We looked at things. The goal was to try to understand how is the user, in this case, the learner, going to engage with the platform, and then try to design in a way that guides them through that experience well. I think it's a balancing act of acting. How do we want the user to interact with things? And a balancing act of what will users do no matter what we want? Like what are some of them going to engage with? I don't know, Will, if that's what you guys have been finding as you guys have been kind of working through what the LMS is going to be like.
Well, you know, we in real life, real world, we started pretty strong, and then some constraints were put on the project to add in some processes I don't agree with, maybe. But anyways, it's slowing down a little bit.
Leaders sometimes come in and just add their own thoughts on things without any research.
It's fine.
Sorry, I'm less contained than Will is about my feedback.
But you know, to Josh's point, like he's saying about Canvas, similar things with Docebo. Like, you know, when you can, you know, if you've got Schoology and it's an out of the box solution, you can't touch it. You know, you focus on, well, how do you write your narrative? What kind of images do you use? What are your structures of the learning? Do you maybe do something like, you know, read, reflect, write? Whatever. You can focus on the design, the content design. When we're using something like Canvas or Docebo, I know in my context with Docebo, I have a localization feature that will let me change almost any piece of text in the platform. Example, you know, Docebo, the word Docebo is in places in the platform. We flip that out for the name of our university, right? So it doesn't say Docebo, it says university. You can also then use that to do translation and stuff, but like there's another better example, like Docebo calls their tool a learning plan. Like if you do a series of courses in a row, so you want the student to do course 1, 2, 3, 4, they call it a learning plan. Technically, that's not inaccurate, but it is more of a linear path, and so we changed it to say learning path. That's okay, you know, simple things. But that level of customization means that when you want to make the user experience, you have to take it very seriously. And there's a lot of features to consider, because when Schoology gave you that out-of-the-box thing, they made all those decisions. Now, when you can customize it, you have to make every decision. What do the icons look like? Are the icons going to be all vector images? Are they pictures? Are they emoji? Or what? What colors are you going to use? Are you going to use your brand colors? Are you going to change the brand color because it's a learning environment? You want to make your own little. All these are these decisions that the out of the box does for you. Now you have to do it yourself. And then sometimes, I know in Docebo specifically, you know, they have a waitlisting feature for instructor-led trainings, right? So we can deliver an instructor-led training course, and it has a week-long set of events. You know, Monday has an event at 9 a.m., Tuesday's got at 10 p.m., blah, 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 all week, and people can pick and choose the session they want to attend. If the session fills up, you can turn on a wait list. The default Docebo waitlisting features did not really communicate well that someone was on the wait list. If they joined it, they just thought they joined the course. They didn't really know that they were in the wait list and not in the course. Okay. So they'd knock on our door on the session day, be like, what the heck? I thought I was on the course. No, you're number 26 out of 25. You're on the wait list. You didn't get to go to the course today. Well, we can modify the CSS, and I created a red banner around the course. If you're in a course and you're on the wait list, it tells you you're on the wait list, and it, you know, and then there's an email communication. Like, these are the decisions we decided to make to improve those things. Now, those are small things already in place. We are starting from scratch to say, what is our learning experience going to be from the top down?
Okay.
And that's why, you know, if you put these as opposites, out of the box or custom, you can really, I think, process what you want to accomplish with your overall project. Like, am I trying to custom code a new website? That is too far. Am I trying to just use the defaults for everything? That is too far. Most times we're going to always need something in the middle of making the LMS meet our exact needs. What are those needs? That's this question to answer with all the work that goes into preparing the user experience from the front door to the attic, right? Like if you think about it as a house, when you're talking about your LMS, what do you want the person to do when they knock on the front door? What do you want them to experience when they go up the stairs? Where are the stairs? Mm-hmm. Is there a kitchen? We think about a house metaphor. There's things you have to have: a bathroom, kitchen, bedroom. You don't have to have a basement. I did not know that. I grew up in an area of the country with basements. Basements are not everywhere. They're not very popular in like San Antonio and Austin, Texas. I did not know that. But like when you take that metaphor in context, we know what we want in a house. Do you know what you want in your learning management system? We default to having a course, but what kind of courses do you need? Docebo provides us in the corporate context 2 types of courses: e-learning courses for asynchronous and instructor-led training courses for instructor-led trainings. That's not a need in academics. Like I've never considered a use case where I needed to have an instructor-led training course in traditional education.
Yeah, I mean,
but Docebo needs it.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you're talking about, right? So in traditional education, when you're talking the education you're providing to the students, sure. When we're talking about employee and faculty training, basically your framework is basically what we're implementing right now. It's a slightly different thing. But anyway, let's back up here. Okay, let's say you're in a scenario where you have a chance to, whether it's an LMS or to redesign a website or your courses, you have the ability to take something that's existing and try to overhaul parts of it to make it a better experience, right? And I like to use the word experience when we're talking about this, because at the end of the day, whatever we're making, it's a learning experience, an experience for the user in a digital platform. And so we're crafting that experience, right? And so how do you go about doing it? So, Will, how did you guys start this game? Was it asking senior leaders what all should be in the LMS? How did you start this activity?
Well, not unfortunately, but like accidentally, I guess, even incidentally, like we were dealing with a problem.
Okay.
We have an access problem. So Docebo is designed to provide access to learners through a tool they call catalogs.
Okay.
They call it a catalog because they want it to, in like a SAMR model, maybe they want it to like. No, maybe that's not the best one. Maybe the RAP model. They want it to replicate a traditional catalog.
Okay.
If you got a physical catalog back in the 90s, you flipped through the pages, you saw things you could buy, you picked the ones you wanted to buy, you mailed in your thing, and you got those things sent to you. So they built catalogs to host all of your courses. And if you don't have your catalog set up correctly with who can access the catalogs, people can't access your courses. So without a catalog, you have to directly enroll someone or they can't get to it. It's kind of cool. It's kind of frustrating because in traditional education, higher education as an example, the registrar puts all students in their courses, right? I mean, there's some exceptions, but that's not the point, right? The registrar controls enrollment.
Yeah.
And that is academics.
Although that's changing as AI gets more involved in things, but that's a completely different episode.
Asterisks. There's an episode for us, right? AI and enrollment. But in corporate, it's almost all self-select, except compliance. If not for a compliance course, in corporate, everyone picks their own courses. They choose what to go to. And so giving the user the autonomy and agency to pick their own courses requires a mechanism like this catalogs tool. We looked at our catalogs and they're all a mess. So the catalogs have been stacking up for 5 years in the platform. There's 150 of them and they don't make sense. There's just so many. It got to a point when I was on the HR side of business where I had actually deleted almost all of our catalogs and just pared it down to 3. Are you a people manager? There's a catalog. Are you an employee? I don't care who you are. There's a catalog. Or are you not a people manager? there's a catalog, right? I pretty much had boiled it down to 3 because there's just too many. Now on the customer education side, we just have so many catalogs that when somebody reaches out like, oh, I can't get to a course, it takes us 2 hours to figure out why. Well, you're in this catalog, but not that catalog. This catalog's assigned, but you don't have access to this one, so we need to assign a new catalog. But if I assign this catalog, this feature's not working with that, and it becomes a mess. So we looked at this and said, well, we have to start over. We just have to figure out this access issue so that if you're this kind of customer you're in, if you're this kind of customer you're in, if you're a partner, if you're a guest, if you're, just really clean it up. And I cannot show the work we're doing on that and whatever, but that problem has pushed us into starting out like planning user journeys, right? So an easy one is like an onboarded employee, somebody who joins the company. What happens? Day 1, they're enrolled in the course. They get their compliance courses. Day 2, this. Day 3, day 4. Again, I don't have those kinds of work, but one thing that I will show in just a little bit is a user experience I've been doing. I've talked in just a previous episode about like we're building certifications. So one of these user experiences, if you think about the large wireframe of an entire LMS, there's all these subsets, and I'll show one, but you walk through what would it take to get from A to B. That's the big question. We're trying to say if someone is trying to get into our LMS as a customer to get to our learning, what does it take? Mm-hmm. How do they get to the front door? How do they step in the house? How do they go to the next room? What's in that room? How do they go to the next, and working that out. So wireframing was our first task. We just and more brainstorming, not to like build it in an exact structure, but what are all the things we need people to be able to access? For us, it's course offerings, stuff they're not in, their current enrollments, right? We actually don't have necessarily a great space right now for them to see what they're enrolled in. What certifications do we offer? How to get enrolled in those certifications? What instructor-led trainings do we offer? How to get enrolled in those instructor-led trainings? Like we had these big boxes saying what is the stuff we offer. Now we've figured out those categories. What does it take to get the users into them? Mm-hmm. And it's not easy, but when we started that process, you kind of like, all right, put on 4 or 5 boxes on the screen. Suddenly you've got 50 boxes because you're trying to plot this whole thing out, and it gets a little wiry. Not necessarily a good turn of phrase. Mm-hmm. Josh may have some suggestions on how I could do it better, but it's just me and my buddy. We're making it work at work, and we're figuring it out as we go. What's happened, though, is we brought that brainstorm to our leadership and said, hey, here's what we're thinking. Mm-hmm. We believe to fix this problem, this recurring problem of access, we need to look at this entire user journey and redesign the platform. Leadership agrees, but they came back and said, well, let's survey the users. Let's do, thought groups like research think tanks. Let's get users in the room and talk to them. Let's do some internal, like our employees use the customer education too. Like let's do internal they came back with a lot more constraints. So my buddy and I had done the user journey. We're like, we're ready. We know what it takes now to go fix this. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, let's go get some more data. Now, I don't know. Do you think that's a good idea? What do you think, Josh?
So
what would you have done?
I'm always torn between this, right? Because I think in an overhaul, they're not wrong. You should probably actually get user information, do what I would call now here's my thing. I think it could be simpler. I don't think it needs to be like let's pull together all these focus groups and survey everybody and do, because at the end of the day, so here's my hot take for a second. User surveys. For this type of thing, like when we're talking a digital experience, whether it's a website or whatever, they're basically useless. And here's why. Okay, users don't actually know why they do things or what they want. We all think we know what we want or why we do things, but it's not always intentional. So like the only thing I would maybe include in there, and I'll throw this resource in there. Let me make sure I can find it here real quick. But I have a philosophy behind user testing, which I know is just going to totally surprise you. Let me see if I can find the book here real quick. Don't make me think. There we go. I will drop this link in here. But a guy by the name of Steve Krug released several different books called around this idea of Don't Make Me Think. My personal favorite is Don't Make Me Think Revisited. He kind of goes back and does it. But Krug is like a UX expert, right? And he helps companies do UX testing and helps companies do UX research. He's kind of a UX designer. But in his book, he presents a model, because a lot of the current like UX testing model, before you do stuff, it's kind of like, okay, you pull together focus groups, you have them do all this testing, and you pull in like some outside third party to do the UX testing, UX designer for firms or whatever you call them, at this point, and they'll like user research people, right? And he basically says like the average company doesn't have the time or ability to just do that. So like what he encourages is a continuous model, but the one thing he does encourage is what he kind of calls these self-run UX tests. And so what we actually practiced this in our scenario, not for some of our other overhauls, we started doing it later, but it was essentially this idea where like you bring a user in, okay? So we actually did this on a form that we were trying to revamp because it was not being used properly. It was our course revision form, and it was just not being used the way. So what we did is we pulled a handful of users that were willing to do it, pulled them into a Zoom call for 30 minutes. We gave them three pieces of paper. Each piece of paper gave them a task to do on the form, and we walked them through the process of what they were going to do, which was basically try to complete this task using the form. Here's who you are as a user. Here's your objective. Complete this on the form, and talk out loud why you're doing, like what decisions you're making and what you're thinking as you're looking at things, right? And so we did that, 5 users, 30 minutes, easily done in a week. And the amount of data that we got from that, just those testings, was invaluable. Like it was you would hear people say things or do certain things. And the thing that Krug kind of pushes is that you don't want the user to tell you what they think. You want the user to show you what they're doing. And then you make the call off of what they're actually doing on what would change things.
Right, because again, they're not the expert
they are
in the
not the
platform
expert
or design
in the platform,
or whatever.
Right? So they may tell you they want this button here, but what they actually mean is something different, because that actually wouldn't solve their problem. They think that would solve their problem, but they're not actually right. One of the infamous things we go back to from these testings that was super helpful for us is context. The course revision form we were doing, it had 3 different options that they selected from, which was like, is this an urgent fix? Is this, I forget what the exact options were, but it was like basically less urgent and not urgent, right? Yeah. Here's the thing that happened in this testing that lives in infamy, is one of the testers was like filling out the form, and I don't know if he just like forgot we were there, or it was like, but he said out loud, he goes, I guess he's like, I guess this isn't really urgent, but I would just select urgent every time. And he selected urgent and moved down and went to like the next thing. And he is the reason that the word urgent shows nowhere on the form. We changed our situations. We changed from letting the user define how urgent it was to letting the user define what type of issue it was, based on the actual issue itself. And we defined how urgent that was in our process. That like massively changed things. So like this is a much smaller scenario, but like for an LMS or things like that would be what I would do in the beginning if I don't know the problem already. Like if I don't already have enough of that information to feel like I can make a justified call.
And that is such a great example of like that. I mean, that's perfect. It's perfect. You got the user to give you feedback. They weren't even conscious that they were giving feedback. Mm-hmm. Just like, what would I do? Okay. They just said it, right? Yeah. And you were able to capture that gem and go, oh, there's a problem. Yeah. Now the response to that problem is what we were talking about at the beginning of the episode. Your out of the box solution goes, we just need an urgency indicator. They get to pick urgency. That's out of the box. The custom approach goes, oh, no, we're not going to let them pick urgency, right? That's an answer. That's an appropriate answer. It sounds like that's what you did, right? Did you not allow them to select urgency at all?
We switched to statements about the issue, right? So, like, originally it was like they would pick urgent or one of the other categories, and then they would describe the issue to us. We switched from urgent to, like, The statements would be something like, there's an inconsistency in language here. Like they were preconceived
and
statements.
your interpretation of that is like on your
our
back
interpretation
end, your
of
support
is
team
we
goes,
defined
that's not
which
urgent.
of those statements were actually urgent. So like if somebody selected a setting is broken in an activity, that's one of the options, right? Is that if they selected that option, we don't say on the form that that's urgent, but in the back end that's urgent, right?
You know,
if somebody selects none of these statements are my option, it's immediately not urgent. We don't care. Like if it's not one of those.
There's
problems.
probably 5 different ways to solve this problem. I like that. I think there's 2 that I would highlight. One is what you've done. You've mapped statements that they can understand and are semantically true, right? I have a typographical error. That that's a statement. They just select that option, no text. I don't want them to give me too much context. Like that's for later forms, whatever. But that triggers you to go, that's a next week problem, right? Like the urgency is there. It's just mapped to a semantic statement.
Yeah.
The other option that I would offer, and we don't need to go into all the options. I'm just saying, like when you consider the comparison of out of the box to custom, that's one way. The other thing is you can say, okay, well we still want urgency. We just are not going to call it urgent. And I would also recommend, like if you're going to have a drop down of maybe a 1 through 4 scale, don't make it 1 to 4. Don't make it 4 to 1. People are going to always pick 4. They're always going to pick most urgent. They want this app. This is one of it's true of anything I've ever done. If I get a chance to pick my urgency in a ticket, I pick urgent. I want attention. I'm submitting the ticket because I have a problem. But so don't give them a 1 through 4 scale or a 4 through 1 scale. Give them 2, 3, 1, 4. Like and it's I'm using those numbers to represent like. Still give them statements. I have a problem. Something's broken. Something's not working at all. My team is stranded. Like whatever your phrases are, don't use the words urgent or not urgent because people are always. But like, if you have that scale that Josh is talking about, there is a 1, 2, 3, 4 urgency level. I still think there's value in not putting it in that order in front of the user because they're always going to pick the top option or whatever they perceive is the most. So you have to make it semantic enough that they're not just picking the thing that they think is going to get them attention. It has to mean something to the user and give it an order that's not numerically associated because users are smart. They'll figure out what 4 out of 4 is. They'll figure out DEFCON 0, whether or not it's if it's hit like Josh. If yours is there's a typographical error that's mapped to 1, and number 4 is the course won't load. Right? Yeah. I don't know, but like if number 4 is the most urgent, you're gonna get people picking 4, even when they have a typographical error. And that's even
in our new system that occasionally happens, where you have somebody who has figured out how to work the system. The difference
users are users, but
we immediately ask them for a description of the problem, and the second they describe it, it's very clearly not that problem, and it's their Anyway, that's the focus, not necessarily what the solution we did, but like the user testing we did. And there were other reasons we went with the statement version that we did that came out of that UX testing that was done. But what I would do is that's simple. Like you can do that pretty easily. And honestly, what Krug recommends is just like a continual process for that type of UX testing where like every couple of months you're just testing your user experience. So you're constantly getting that data. But if you didn't have that previously, that would be my starting point. I wouldn't care about asking focus groups what they think. I wouldn't care about sitting down in a room with people and asking them what they think will solve the problem.
This is so actionable.
This is the 37 Signals base camp part of me that it's part of the reason I love their philosophy. They will literally make the statement that users don't know anything about what they actually want. And they're not wrong. Like there's like some do if they know the field, but for the most part, people think they know what would fix a problem, but they don't actually know. And so like for me, it's just like learning what the users are doing, so then you can devise a solution from there. So that might have been where I had started if I didn't already have that data. The reason I'm in between in this, Will, though, is I also come from the philosophy that sometimes it's just obvious what would fix the problem. And like, or at least it's like we have enough of confidence what would fix the problem that we don't need to UX test. All that's gonna do is just confirm things. Like if you guys already know that there's just too many catalogs, and those catalogs are making it harder for people to access things.
Right.
there's no point in UX testing. You know already. You have enough support tickets. You have enough data to say this is the problem. What's the purpose of slowing it down by another 5 weeks to do that testing? It's just try to fix it. Now, when you're doing a full overhaul, I think you need to be a little bit more careful. But like if you know that that's the problem, right? So that's why I'm kind of torn. I don't know, but I probably would have started at that UX space.
Well, and what I do like about what you're saying with the Krug approach is if you do that with 1 to 5 people, you know, like 5 is a lot at 30 minutes. You're talking 2.5 hours of commitment there, you know, and that's just the time in the call. There's always notes. There's reviewing
and actually, here's the thing about Krugs that I like. He actually gives a model for filling out notes afterwards. So basically, like what he proposes is you do an hour. You do half hour of testing for the user, and then you do a half hour of the 2 people facilitating, just finishing out their notes and breaking them down, and that's it. So the thing, though, we're talking about, that's 5 hours, okay? That 5 hours can easily be done in 1 week.
Right.
And then you just make decisions off of that data that's in there. Like, that's
if you do
the solution.
If you do 1 person or 2 people or 3 people, 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours of work, you're still going to get a substantial amount of data. And it go up to 5, even more. That's like, I don't have any problem. I think you can get actionable data from 1, 2, and 3 people. So if anybody's concerned, like, oh, it's just going to take forever, we're talking 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Now, it's all the more effective if your stakeholders or leadership say you have to send a survey. You can build off of the information you got in those. Like in 3 hours, you have so much more guidance on where you're going with it. Like Josh said, in my context, I have. And what I'm going to demo today with Miro and the kind of the wireframe work, like I know this problem intimately, so I was able to solve for this problem. But this one user journey does fit in the larger overhaul, and that's where we do need. I actually wrote a note, Josh. I think I'm going to do this specifically. I'm going to offer because my leadership wants me to talk to customers. Okay. My leadership wants me to get in front of customers, and they suggested focus groups and this and other formats. I'm like, this is the format. If I'm gonna have to be in front of the customer, this is the format.
By the way, if you would like a copy of the book,
amazing.
I can drop it off at some point. I actually don't even know if I have a copy here. I think they're all at my office now. So
we'll set a Notion task.
We'll set a reminder. But
but to jump into a little bit of the practical here, right? We've got tons of ideas. When you're doing this, you're gonna use some measure of all these tools. Wireframing, just generic brainstorming. You're going to get stakeholder impact and leadership impact. Maybe you're going to do these surveys like the Krug style. You know, what are you going to do? Iterative. This, like you might do like a 1 month MVP and then a 3 month and then a 6 month plan. There's tons of different tools you can use. But let's walk through just a brainstorm here, a wireframe that I was doing. So I'll go with.
And I will say, Will, while you're bringing that up, like the practical then. So Will's going to be showing like user journeys and wireframe stuff here for a second. That would be the next step I would do, right? Is where you're mapping out the flow.
You've got the things figured out.
Especially if you're trying to fix something that exists, I would do this testing that I'm talking about. I would then map a user journey, like how they get there, and I would specifically identify the pain points that came up in the testing on the user journey, and then I would focus on creating a new wireframe that we believe solves those pain points. Like that would be the like steps I would follow to figuring this out.
All right, let's get the screen share up. So this is a specific use case. I'm going to walk us through a little bit of what's going on just to set the case. So I'm dealing with certifications, right? In our context, we have a number of certifications that you can get in just generic things, little elements of our product. So there's like maybe one layer of hierarchy of just like there's tons of certifications here. Then there's something that we call, a certain layer or role. It's kind of like if you do any of these, if you have 2 years of experience, if you're really good at this, you can go up and get this top tier one. Well, you need to have some combination of the lower tier certifications to get the top tier one.
Okay.
But to get the ultimate certification, you must have the top tier. So there's low tier, top tier, and then the ultimate. So there's three layers to this. Ultimate tier. So I have skipped all the little guys.
Okay.
This one in front of us, user becomes certified. I'm not using terms. There's trademarks. There's copyright. I don't want to use real business terms. I'm sorry. But if you get that top tier certification, you are eligible to go on to the ultimate. So this is top tier. You become certified. Before I changed jobs in April, everything after this user becomes certified did not exist. So it was all manual. There's tons of stuff going on. So now there are already some solutions in place. But when you complete the top tier certification, you get an automated email invitation to apply for the ultimate. Mm-hmm. Just because you did the top tier doesn't mean you can do the ultimate. But when you apply for the ultimate, now you're in the process. Once they complete that application, right, they get we do an application review. If the user is, there's actually 3 decisions here, but if they're not eligible, they're kicked out, just done. If they're not eligible, go get eligible is the communication. If
Please
they
tell
are
me that's
eligible,
the notification they get. It just says
go get eligible.
Go get eligible. Like, do better.
do better. Pretty much it says you do not have the top tier certification, go get the top tier certification and then reapply.
Yeah. Corporate way of saying be better. Sorry.
Be better. Yeah. Otherwise, if they're eligible, they're waitlisted pretty much. Now, there's a lot more context to this. This is my very generic overview of the user experience because there's some other things that go in place. But let's just say they are eligible. And it's we're at the beginning of a cycle, so we do them every quarter. The cycles run every quarter, and they're enrolled in the exam. Great. So they've applied. There's a review. They're enrolled in the exam. They get to participate in the next quarter's cycle. Now they participate in the exam cycle, and I'm actually using this again. I can't show you my real one, but I'm using this to demonstrate that this user participates in the exam cycle explodes. This is its own user journey.
Okay.
Right, and I've used this circle to capture
circles in there to show that there's something else in there. Yeah.
For the sake of our demonstration today, right? When they're participating in the exam cycle, they have to go get their instructions. They have to go perform a scenario-based experience. They have to create learning in our
fun tech thing here that, like, obviously we'll build this very quickly, but this is why I like doing this in Miro. There's lots of tools to do this in, but like if I was going to do this in Miro, I would create that flow separately in Miro on the same board, and I could link it here. So like if a user is like people who are looking at this, they could look at this and go, oh, there's something else here. And they could click on it. It would immediately take them to the part of the board that is laid out on. So like it helps. I love Miro just because it's like this giant board that you can brain out the entire thing. Like you can kind of lay out everything you're trying to do in one area.
To Josh's point, if I were to explode this workflow, I'm trying to demonstrate for you folks so you can see a little bit of what we're talking about. With A, B, C, D, E, F, all those are different things. So let's just say A is completing the work, B is getting graded, C is they have to go have an interview with their grader to go over their feedback, right? So there's this large process here. What Josh's point is, if I clicked on A, it would take me to that workflow where I've documented it separately in Miro. So they go through the exam cycle, and if they pass or fail, now we have decisions, right? So if they fail, the user's emailed, they're advised they can reapply, but there's like a, X amount of days cooldown. They can't just come right back into the next cycle. They can't just, start back up again tomorrow. They have to wait before they can reapply, before they can do it again. They can apply again any day, but if they pass, right? Hey, you're certified. That's great. And then, again, another workflow here where I put a little more data on this one than just the ABCD of the other one, but this would be, if the user passes, they get sent a badge. They get sent their certification, like a PDF format. They're advised, like they're certified for 2 years, so they have a renewal cycle. They have to renew in 2 years. They get invited to user groups, whether that's on LinkedIn or other places, right? So this whole thing is documenting a workflow. And in Docebo, I've implemented some of these fixes. Like I said before, none of this existed before. So there's now automated notifications at this stage. There's automated notifications at this stage. There's automated notifications at this stage. Like before, there was a person manually taking effort on all of these steps. And that created a lackluster experience because notifications got forgotten. People moved through things without getting checked, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, keeping some of these fixes in mind, we got the automations in place. It's I think good to know that this workflow for us not only helped me identify places I had to make problems and make fixes, but as I'm working with the larger project of the university overhaul, I have subsets of these kinds of workflows for everything, from courses to ILTs to certifications, like this as an example, certifications, et cetera, et cetera. So there's just a ton of content that's going into this, and when we're using Miro like this, and we're using this user flow, my colleagues and I can work together, and I can make the squares, and I can make the diamonds, and somebody else can be making the circles and building things out. There's ways to use this tool even for collaboration to get the work done, make the wireframe effective, and then build it out. Now, I think, Josh, you had a couple thoughts you want to bring in to help us connect this stuff together.
Where I would connect the couple things we've shown, right, is what Will has here is kind of like a process user journey map, right? And then what we've shared on the other side, if you want to go over to like our actual like wireframe UX experience, this is not the same thing. Like, this isn't the LMS that they wireframe, but this is we wireframed a website. So zoom in real quick, Will, on just the main page. So like Miro, what I love about Miro then is you can do both of these here, right? So you can lay that user journey out, but then you can also like start to lay out your UX, right? So like think about this mapping out a road trip or whatever you're doing. The user journey has shown you the essentially kind of the basic map steps you want to go through, right? Or like where you want to hit the key milestones, right? So if you're talking like a road trip, Will's figured out the cities, like he's figured out where he wants to go, right? Then the actual mapping of the user experience, the interface, is figuring out the actual route to getting there, right? It's actually like where you're going and the experience that you're going to have, right? And so you can map this out as an actual journey. Now, why I get a lot of pushback from even team members on this when we first started doing this. Like, why do all this work to map this out here? Why not just create the interface? And there's a reason I do it this way. This is really easy to change. If I want to move service 1 box down or whatever, or example 4 box over, like, I can do that in seconds. I don't need to go code anything. I don't need to go change HTML and build a whole new page. It takes me like 5 seconds to do this. And then these frames that I have in Miro, I can copy and paste from the top to just kind of keep replicating what I'm building, right? So it's really easy. It also feels less baked at this point. And then what I'm able to do in Miro is actually what I would do if I have the time to do it, is I would actually set meetings with possible users at this point, and I actually use Miro to kind of like have them walk through the journey of what it could look like. And I do the same thing I did in UX testing. I kind of get free-flowing thoughts from the user on things. And it might not equal a change, but this is how I can kind of iteratively figure out small things then to see if this journey that I've built out actually is going to get them through the whole flow properly that we did then on the user journey, right? And so that's how I use Miro. It's called kind of, I forget what exactly they call it in UX testing. It's basically like essentially like paper testing, because they used to do this on paper, where they would literally like on paper draft out the flow, and they'd have the person point to where they were going to go next, and then the person would like take them to that spot in the paper. I'm basically doing that in Miro. I'm like, tell me where you would, okay, this is your objective, this is what you got to do. Basically, I'm trying to tell them to get through the user journey. Tell me where you would go to do that, right? Or what you would do. And then in Miro, I can kind of freely guide that and kind of adapt as we're going to try to see what might be the best experience.
If they click this button then too, like with Miro, like Josh was saying earlier, they can actually take that button to here, and it would, that process we talked about with Krug before, you could do right here in this wireframe, where they're actually clicking through the wireframe before, like Josh said, you've put any effort into coding, development, databases, et cetera, everything that goes into website development. You could just do it free frame right here.
And why I do it in Miro in this example is, okay, let's say, for example, these don't line up perfectly because Will's mock-up user journeys from something else, but let's say I had a user journey that needed them to click on the Explore Our Work button, whatever. Let's say that gets to something next, right? So let's say I have them, I'm trying to get them there, right? And I say, okay, here's your objective. You need to go find more work that this person's done on their website. Where would you go do it? And they have no idea, and they go, I'd click on service 1, okay? Let's say in that moment I have an idea. What if I deleted services 1, 2, and 3, and I made the Explore Work button a giant button at the top, right, in my mind, right, that I wanted to do. In Miro, I could real quick say, give me 1 second. I'm going to change this and go, okay, how would you do this now? Like I can on the fly change what I'm doing to get some ideas for how we might then enhance the thing. So instead of having to keep testing, going back, testing, going back, this actually gives me a chance to kind of live adapt things so that I can get more information on how a user might engage with the ideas that we have and bring that back to the team for enhancement. All of this is iteratively trying to figure out what is the user going to do and how do I guide them to do what I want them to do, like for the objective that they need, right? Based on that user journey. That's how I would get some of this idea of like design. And then you get to more higher fidelity stuff where you're like actually creating the page and things like that. That's my ideal. You don't always have that time, so sometimes you have to pull those out, but like that would be how I'd want to try to get to something as we're looking at stuff. Yeah.
Just some tools in your toolbox, folks. You know, we are doing this at my LMS level, you know, and like I said, this is one single process in it. So we are doing the stuff of, we have this mapped out for what does it look to log in. We have this mapped out for what does it look to get to courses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you can do these kinds of workflows. You can do that kind of wireframing to really iron it out. I'm convinced from Josh. Like, I think it should start maybe with that Krug effort where you're going to do like the sit down and have people go through your existing things so you can better identify problems. But if you already understand the problem, you might use a tool like this to map it and really make it, again, collaborative process so you and your colleagues can work on it together, but also there's some sort of like documentation making it visible to others. So I think that's good for Miro and all that today. We are always having fun with this tool and the options here to kind of show you some things. We hope that that's valuable for your experience to see what we're actually doing. This is work Josh and I do to try and run our LMSs, fix our LMSs, create learning experiences. This is how we actually do it. We're not just trying to make stuff up for this. So I guess the call to action always with this, we want to make sure you kind of have something to land on, is maybe don't just do the work. That's actually how we got in the problem. You know, like when somebody's just got the LMS, like, oh, I'm just going to set it up. They just went willy-nilly, kind of put it in place. Now, 5 years later, I'm dealing with those problems because people didn't take the time to think through those user journeys, to think through what it takes to get to learning, to think through what might stop a learner. This is a big question. What might stop a learner from continuing, right? Getting them to persist in your environment is actually a considerable issue. You know, if you have to log in and then log in again and then it logs you out and then you log in again and then you log out and you log in again because your timeouts are set to like 5 minutes, right? So somebody's learning and it times them out and they're going to stop learning, right? So that's a problem you need to fix because they're not going to persist. What are those things that you can address? And I think it's worth taking the time to like wireframe it, figure it out, play with it, because once you've got a really good idea, now you can build from a sound structure. And that's backwards design. That's what we do with our learning content. That's what we want to do with user experiences, user interfaces, etc., etc. As always, find us on the socials, whatever it is, however you get there. You know, if it's at High Tech Podcast or at High Tech Pod, you can find us on the internet. Subscribe, like, share, all the good things, please and thank you. If you have ideas for the podcast, you want to come on the podcast, you want to sponsor the podcast, you want to be an affiliate for the podcast, reach out to us, inbox at hightechpod.us. And then always head over to our website, hightechpod.us, for all of these information, all of our socials there, all of our inbox, etc. But every episode has an episode page, which has resources, more information, maybe the Miro pages and different things like that. So you can always share that page to someone if you want them to see exactly what they can get out of each of our episodes. Other than that, that's a wrap on this week. Empowering minds.
Embracing tech.
Cheers.
Buckle up, let's ride the wave. Future's calling, tech to crave. High Tech Podcast, light the way. Join the journey, click and play.